Alright guys, we are going to do activity 2.4 number 6. So this one here is our number 6. We want to take a look. The big thing with drawings like these is we need to decide what our scale is going to be. So how many centimeters or inches or whatever the measurements we're using, how many of those per grid square. Okay, so with this there's a couple different options. You could maybe say a centimeter is a grid square, but since we have some that are half a centimeter, just to make it a little easier, I'm going to put 1 square is equal to half a centimeter. Okay, so if you decide to do 1 centimeter per square, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure when you're doing this, you're aware that sometimes you might have half squares or quarter squares. You might be a little off. You might not be on those grid lines. So I like to put a little square down in the corner of my work for these that says how much a square is equal to. And now we're going to start looking at our front, our right, and then our top. Okay, so our front, we see overall the height is 5 centimeters, and across we have 3.5. So if we said each square is half, we're going to have 10 up. Okay, so if we do it, if you're doing it as for a half square, it's going to be kind of large. Okay, so we had 10 up. We know that this is the object itself. Okay, so we want to darken this edge because it's a big rectangle. And we know it was 3.5 across, so that's going to be 7 of our blocks. Okay, we're going to darken this entire rectangle. Since this is the entire edge of our front view. When we're looking at the object, we can kind of tell it's a big rectangle from the front. And that way, or that's why we don't need to do this as construction lines first. If you weren't sure, then maybe do construction lines and then take a look at the rest of the object and then decide. Okay, so right now we have our overall outline for our front. From the front, we can also see the change in depth here. So what we need to do is we need to see where along here we would change our heights. So this is 2 centimeters tall. So on this side, that's going to be 2 here. Okay, so that's 4 of our blocks, 4. So this is where we're going to start. So maybe put a little construction line to start across here. And then we know it's 1 more centimeter up. Okay, so we're going to go 1, we know from this side we're going to go 6. Okay, but now we're not quite sure how far apart these two are. Okay, if we take a look back over here, it says it's 2.5 centimeters till the edge of this taller block. So 2.5 is going to be 5 of our little blocks. So we're going to go 5 blocks across this way, and then we can go up to meet our other line. Okay, so something like this. So I'll darken this to make sure that we can see our object lines. Just like that. And this is our front. So then we need our top. So if we're looking at it down like this, we want to see what we can see from that direction. So we would probably see this little rectangle here. We'd see another little rectangle and a little square. It seems like it would fill out the entire top view. So we know it's already 3.5 across. Now we need to know our depth. We notice right here it says it's 2 centimeters. So we're going to start by bringing our construction lines up from our front. Again, there's no specific distance in between these. I usually do 3 or 4. Since these are larger, I'll do 1 or 2 instead. We'll start drawing our construction lines. We said it was 2 centimeters in depth, so that's going to be 4 of our grid spaces if you're doing half ones like I am. If you decided to do full centimeters per grid space, then you just do 2 grids. All right, we're going to darken these. Alright, and then we need to see what edges we would see. So looking down like this, we know it's cut across this back portion. We need to see how far that would be. If we notice it was 2 total, and the other depth measurement we have is 1 centimeter for this one brick here. So that means these are cut in half. So this back half is just going to be 1 centimeter away from the back. and a line all the way across, just like this. Okay, and then we know this direction, it was 2.5, so this is our 1 centimeter. But we can check from here, we know it's the same as where this one is, so we can bring a construction line up and draw it along here. Okay, that's our front, that's our top. So now we need our right hand side. So for our right hand side, we know it's the same height as this one, so we can again bring our height, our construction lines across. Again, there's no specific distance. Again, since these are kind of big, I'll bring it a little closer. So we want to take a look at, again, we have our overall height was 5, we have that already, and our depth was 2. We have that from here. So we're going to bring these down in construction lines. This was 4 across, since we're doing the 0.5 centimeters for this one. And this is our little rectangle right here. So what we'll do, now we need to see what we see from this side. We know it's the entire back part. It comes across the front, and it only comes up until our 2 centimeter line, and then comes back and across. So what we can do is we can start just by darkening these outer edges, but then we want to be able to measure using some of the other lines we've already created to make sure we can show where these other pieces are going to go. Okay, so we know that the height is going to wind up the same height for that portion, so we can bring this across. We don't know what the depth is, so what we can do is we can do that square trick in the corner here. We bring our construction lines up and our construction lines over, and it's a square, so 4 by 4, so we do our diagonal 45-degree line. So our depth changed here, so we can bring this line over and down. Okay, so we know it's going to be here. Alright, so we're using the construction lines from our other views to start drawing in our lines for this right hand side. So instead of having to remeasure, instead of having to go through and figure out what those measurements were, we can just use those lines that we have. So I do know that some of these objects it might be easier to count, but again, I just want to show you this technique since this is something we'll be doing later on. Okay, so now we're not quite done because from this side we still see this little blocks, so we know it's the same height. We bring it over, so we're going to darken this portion and this one right here. Alright, and that's our finished number 6 for 2.4.